We're live here in the House Transportation Committee on Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. And we have distinguished guests today. Starting with the CFO of the Agency of Transportation. Candace, welcome back. I'm looking at your presentation from back on January 21st and still trying to make sure I really understand how you built, where you started from with the budget and how you got there, and making sure that I understand all those pieces. And I know you have some additional, I think you have some additional stuff for us. So
yes,
welcome, and we'll have quite a bit of back and forth, I think, over the next hour.
great. Thank you very much. For the record, Candace Elmquist, Chief Financial Officer, Agency of Transportation. So we have this slide deck from a week and a half ago now. I also have prepared a memo on the indirect cost rate. And I'm happy to either dive into the memo, because that was where most of the questions were last time, or I could open it up for questions on the slide deck.
Well, let's start with what you brought, and we'll go back to
Okay,
the memo piece. I guess.
great.
I'll grab my notes. And
The memo should be,
at any point, anybody's got any questions? Once we get started, I'm sure it'll keep going.
great. So the memo is part of the supporting materials, so I wasn't planning on bringing it up
Oh, I'm sorry.
unless you need me to. Sure.
There we go. That's what I'm looking for.
Looks like this, a one pager.
What's that?
online.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess I better bring it up. Okay.
So I will just hit the key points of each paragraph of this memo. I was able to investigate with my staff that the last time we utilized the indirect cost rate for the Agency of Transportation was recently, actually fiscal 2022. The time before fiscal 2022 was fiscal 2004. And it's likely that we had it on continuously between the mid 1990s and 2004. The use of an indirect cost rate is made possible by having an approved indirect cost plan on file with FHWA. We have a plan on file with FHWA right now. We had a plan on file with FHWA last year. This is a normal business process. Choosing to use the plan is what we're considering for fiscal 27. When an indirect cost rate is in use, FHWA is essentially resupplying the cash outlays that AOT advances on behalf of FHWA's share of AOT's indirect costs. So these are eligible expenses that FHWA could pay, and AOT is paying first, and we're receiving reimbursement. So how this happens operationally, costs are billed to the federal FHWA fund code via the regular federal billing process. Once we receive funds, the Department of Finance and Management Financial Operations moves the revenue from the federal FHWA fund code to the transportation fund code. I know that's a little in the weeds, but I thought that was interesting. As we talked about a week and a half ago, it should be noted that the receipt of indirect receipts from FHWA do not increase the total dollar amount from FHWA. That federal apportionment stays the same.
Can you say that again?
Yes. So we are receiving in the 27 budget $12.25 million worth of indirect costs from FHWA, but that doesn't increase the total federal dollars that we are going to receive from FHWA. So those dollars could have essentially gone towards project costs, which is what we talked about last time.
So we have may I?
Yes, please.
So we have FHWA gives us,
An apportionment, a set dollar value.
which is in the millions. This is a separate amount on top of the millions that we have.
It's a part of it, actually.
Oh, so it's incorporated in, so I'm just gonna, I don't know, we get $100 million from FHWA. we're not gonna get $112 million from FHWA.
Exactly.
A part of this 100 million is indirect costs.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Representative Powell?
Yeah, thanks, for helping some slow people sort of absorb how, all this, it can be confusing. So, if we were to take this and not use it for indirect costs, go to select to a project, we would have to come up with whatever the match is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but because we're using it with indirect, do we also have to show some kind of match?
No. It is a 1-for-1 swap with transportation fund dollars, so there's no matching for indirect costs received from FHWS.
Okay, thanks.
Candace, how does it come to 12.25 and not 14 or not 8? So how did you, I guess, maybe you want to back up before that. That's a question that I want to understand. But before that, how did the decision get made, or what would drive the decision to go ahead and implement this year as opposed to other previous years, or all the way back in the 90s to 2004? But why decide to do this? What was that decision, and how did that come about, or when did you get brought into that? And why do this as opposed to some other pieces?
Yes, the $33 million hole in the transportation fund for fiscal 27 was quite substantial. The executive committee came together in August to start our budget build for the 27 budget. And we tried to identify avenues to fill that gap. The $12 million, the 12.2 and change figure is very exact. That started off as a little bit higher, 13 million. That was what we thought could be attributed to the indirect cost rate without affecting the rest of the schedule of the White Book projects. That's part of the highways division.
Are you saying you started talking about or investigating this indirect cost issue back in August?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's been on the table through the whole budget process?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And so the specific number that becomes very specific, how does that narrow down from all of the costs that are associated, that are administrative or potentially indirect? How do you get narrowed down to such a specific amount? Like, how does that process work?
The last time we turned on the indirect cost rate, in 2022, we garnered $20 million worth of projects, or sorry, of costs from FHWA. I felt like $20 million was too great a risk to put in this budget cycle. So in conversations with Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed, he and I came to a number of 13 million that was more reasonable for the projects in the White Book. And then it went from 13 million to 12.2 as we narrowed in on exactly what the salary, benefits, and internal service figures from the management were.
Thank you. What does it mean that the 20 million was too much of a risk? What's the risk? I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that.
We never know exactly what is going to be determined as an eligible cost from FHWA, right? So if I'm saying we're building the 27 budget, thinking that we're going to get $12.2 million worth of costs, I, as a CFO, am basically saying, I'm going to find $12.2 million available costs one way or another. So in my mind, as a risk averse individual, I'm thinking, wow, I have to find $12.2 million next year, and 20 million in 2022, I think, was garnered because of the state of emergencies we were under. There was COVID. We were just coming up on the flood. I think the eligible projects now would be different than it was back in 2022. So I tried to.
Universe of money to expenses to pick from, the universe of projects that you could work off of might not, doing this might not have been able to come up with 20 million.
Correct. Yes.
Is what you're saying the risk could have been.
Yes.
And then, I don't know where that would leave us, but you're confident you can come up with 12.2 out of what's available in the White Book projects.
Right.
Okay. Representative Moore? Oh, yes, Representative Moore, you're up.
So if the 12, I'm gonna just say 12.
Of course.
Okay, yeah, so we would have gotten 100 million from FHWA,
Sure.
correct? I mean, that's.
Yes, let's go with
Let's go.
300 million. But yeah.
Let's go. We're gonna get 300 million
Yes.
regardless of whether we use indirect costs or not.
Mhm.
By using the 12 million, which is incorporated in our 300 million, this 12 million is charged to projects in our white book. Is that right? Or can we use this, is that 12 million used for other things in transportation?
So the 12 million is going to be put towards indirect costs, towards
Of
eligible.
projects.
Right. So you could say that of the pot of 300 million that we might get from, that we will get from FHWA, because that's what we're saying the apportionment is.
Yep.
288 is direct to projects. And 12 is going to be indirect,
Okay.
whereas without indirect, 300
Which is
could be
all of
indirect.
these that you're listing here, central service charge, utility.
Exactly.
So, okay, but they're all projects within the white book.
Yes,
And
all.
you're attributing 12 million of this to indirect costs, and the federal government is allowing us to do that,
Yes.
which pretty much offsets maybe people's salary or anything in regards to facility charges.
Yep, I have a
Okay.
list here of
Okay.
eligible
I
indirect
see that.
costs.
Yeah, I see that. Okay.
Utilities, facilities, property management, general office, central
So-
service charges.
Okay, so instead of using state monies for these things that you have that are eligible, we are using $12 million of the $300 million that we normally wouldn't charge to a federal dollar amount to the feds, and they're allowing us to do this because we have this FHWA plan on file and we need to do it this year. Thank you.
President White's.
Yeah, again, okay, so can you remind me, were you here in 2022, the last time this was utilized?
I was not.
Okay. And, you've spoken about your risk averse, your CFO, you're kind of supposed to be risk averse. So I understand, kind of your being a little conservative in terms of feeling like you can commit to 12 million, you're not sure you can find any more. What are the other downsides that come into your mind when using a process like this? Because obviously we haven't used it very often. So what are we missing out on when we're going down this road?
There's less federal dollars available for projects in the highways division.
And just looking at the different items that can come out of that 12 million. And looking at, you know, soap, cleaners, brooms, that you're gonna need a lot of soap to get to $12 million. On the other hand, rent, you know, I think AOT has a lot of property and you're probably charging rent from different divisions. So is that where you're thinking that you might find the majority of that?
Yes, property management, rent, utilities. Again, I feel confident in what's been proposed, the 12.2. I wouldn't have put a number forward that I wasn't confident in getting. I just also am aware that now this is something my staff has to work on for the next year. Yes.
President Powell.
And just to reiterate, so the $12 million, if we weren't doing this, we could potentially have 2 more projects in the white book at $6 million apiece. But of course, we would need the match to go with it.
Yes. That's an accurate statement.
How did adding or the projects that got added into the budget out of the leveraging of the $10 million that added a whole bunch of new projects, did that increase the opportunity to do indirect cost ratio?
I wouldn't say that the administration's $10 million proposal had any relation to the indirect cost rate.
So when we put those projects into the white book or accelerated them in some way, I guess, because they're identified to be done. You had already done the work on what was already in the book. Those were added, but you didn't go in and say, okay, I could do more indirect cost ratio with those.
No, yeah.
You could have or not, I don't know,
Um,
but we didn't.
yeah, I'm not sure.
That part had already been in effect. You had already worked on what was in the white book before that piece was decided or added.
Yes,
Okay, so they were accelerated into the white book after the budget had already been built.
yes.
Okay. But they could potentially be an opportunity for more indirect cost savings since there's more in the book than there was when you first went through it.
Perhaps.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you go.
So I guess we're 30 million in the hole, this FY 27 budget,
We started 33. Yep.
33. Okay, so 12 million of it is indirect costs that we're recouping. Remind me again where the other 18 million is, at RIFs or?
Absolutely. So from my slide deck, we took $21 million worth of reductions. And the September reduction in force and the current reduction in force is 7.5 million of the $21 million
This was the
reductions.
slide that I had. Okay. So, with the 10 million, the governor has stated he wants to take from the purchase and use tax. We had that slide up that has funded $10 million worth of projects, 19 projects throughout the state. That's in addition to all of what we've done. This is just as an aside. If we get the 10 million, we can do this with these projects. So we didn't use that 10 million when we added new projects into the white book. We didn't use ongoing projects to fund those. Like we were in the whole 30 million, which meant we have projects in the white book that may have had to be suspended for a year or something. Was that ever in the mind of maybe we need to pause a project for a year or two because we don't have the money? Instead of that, we went through all of these machinations to get to, we can fund these, but if we get 10 million, we can do these 19 million.
So a part
19
of
projects.
the $21 million worth of reductions was a 5.3 million reduction to highways projects. That's transportation fund dollars only. And then when we were made aware of the $10 million from the administration's proposal, 9.3 of that went back to highways projects.
Okay.
Secretary, did you have something?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, you're behind, I'm sorry, you're behind me there. I'm happy to have you here. By all means.
Joe Flynn, Secretary for the record. Apologize for backbenching, but I just think it's important to make the point. The 10 million in the governor's proposal gets us $63 million worth
We
of
know, we're
projects.
fully aware of that.
Spread across.
Yeah.
The whole state.
Yes. I think Tim had it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to formulate it. I mean, I guess the sort of with Chair Walker is, the 5.3 million. And it's, I guess, again, how did you come to that? I mean, the way I look at it is like every budget that we pass is so big, you're bound to have things that slip or aren't done, and your comfort level is 5.3. It's not necessarily projects are gonna get cut, but just the naturality of the history of things in here, you're gonna have carryover. You look in our book, there's always carryover or potential revisions. So you felt like 5.3 was something that we could do without really affecting projects. It's gonna happen on this thing natural. Is that accurate?
I'd say that it was that figure as a reduction to highways projects before the administration's proposal was a result of the executive team coming together and figuring out what reductions we were going to take as an agency for the 27 proposal. So that 5.3 is only highways projects. There are other reductions to other divisions. All of those reductions were a result of the executive committee coming together and saying, this is what we're putting forward for 27.
Well, you made us clear, it's not really affecting projects, that's sort of like the natural ebb and flows of the budget. You say, or no, or is it more?
I don't know the specifics of
Yeah,
of Jeremy's
yeah.
highways division. So I would defer to him.
Well, that's my understanding, and I guess my other question I'm still wrestling with is just the federal money, like you said, we get 300 million, it's a 5-year appropriation, you have 8 years to obligate it. You constructed a budget based on a 33 million shortfall that was constructed. The governor said, hey, we're gonna give you another 10 million. Same money. Well, you're gonna need federal money, as Secretary Flynn just stated. So you just grab down another 63 million. I'm just struggling at how does that math work? Because we're in the 5th year of a budget and all this money is just sitting there. And we're always told every year that we're maximizing the federal dollars. So how did magically the $63 million still be on the table? And what is our balance? What is our federal balance? I mean, what if our committee said, all right, we're gonna find another 20 million?
So the apportionment
Yeah.
remains the same, but we were able to match up to $63 million for projects through advanced construction.
Yeah,
Advanced construction is a concept of basically borrowing future apportionments.
and so we are borrowing. So if I look in this book and notice the paving is at 140 million and the next year is cut in half, is that an indication of the decisions that we're making today of what's going to be happening in 2028 potentially?
If we get our advanced construction number up to a level that FHWA deems inappropriate, that we have to start cutting back and not borrowing so much. But in terms of exactly what the paving figure is in the future, again, I defer.
Well, not the exact amount, but obviously this was presented to us. Our comfort level is that we're gonna feel the pinch the following year because of the decisions that have been made, not saying right or wrong, but at the end of the day, the decision has been made not to, generate new revenue. I'll get into that argument, but based on that, we're gonna feel that pinch. As of today.
Mr. Secretary, if you'd like to.
If I may. I would state fact respectfully that this committee and this legislature has approved budgets every year that involve advanced construction. This is not new. This is a fiscal tool available by Federal Highway Administration, and it's printed in the Code of Federal Regulation as such. We're borrowing it in as much as we're using available dollars from the future. And I know this does sound like semantics, and I don't mean it to be. This isn't like going to a bank and borrowing money you don't have, and then having to figure out how you're going to pay it back. This is going to someone who has money set aside for you. And you're saying, based on your rules, we'd like to take 12.5 million of that now. And their rules say, sure, you can do that. So it does reduce future, you're correct. One of the wild cards here as well, in this current year, is the reauthorization that we've talked about, which is coming in October of 2026. So we don't know what reauthorization will mean. Every indication at this point is telling us it will be the same or larger, but we can't take that to the bank either. But the point I simply wanted to make was advanced construction is not a new concept. It has been part of every budget the Agency of Transportation has presented, perhaps for decades, if not forever. The conversation really would be the amount of advanced construction, to the concerns you're raising, viable dialogue. But this is not new. So any concern, whether in committee or in the building, about the methodology the agency is using, the building through the T-bill has adopted budgets for years that have been built on advanced construction. But as you understand from the time in this committee, the complexities of how did we get there? In some respects, my simplified mind says, we looked at all the other things we knew we could do without really flipping programs upside down. And then the gap told us 12.5 million was the sweet spot, or 12.25. But it is a somewhat arbitrary process that got us to that number.
Yeah, no, I understood, and like I said, that's well appreciated, I just, like I said, I just want to make it clear to this committee that these decisions have, consequences in my mind. And obviously, advanced construction has been around, but when it's a culmination of the other things that you're doing, it makes me give pause of the effect that we're gonna be having on the out years. I mean, that's just, the reality. And, I just, I think this committee has to be going into this with eyes wide open of what we're doing with the $12.5 million, the $5.3 million that they're gonna be, basically cycling out of this year's budget. The merry-go-round is gonna probably stop there eventually, and then we're gonna have to adjust accordingly. And, I'm not saying there are any, easy decisions, but, just wanted to, point that out. And, I don't know if so I don't know if you answered the last question about the fund balance. What is our federal fund balance? Like, we did come up with another X amount.
Do you mean, what is the
Like
balance?
federal dollars. Now, like I said, we're allotted 300 million and, we're doing advanced construction based on anticipated. So like, what's your comfort level? If this committee said, we just found another 20 million, would you give us $100 million of federal dollars?
I'd say there was a time in recent history, maybe a year and a half ago, when we were up to 400 million in advanced construction, and we've
Yeah.
now gotten that down to like 270, and that's a much more reasonable number.
That is a running balance that you have, that you're keeping, how much you moved into the future funds and.
Yes.
So if it's not new, which we have lots of new members and those of us that are slower learners than others, as the secretary is saying, it's not new, but is it really the scarcity or the financial struggle that we're facing that really highlights it more than perhaps it has in the past? Maybe it's not new, but it certainly comes to light far more because we're probably digging into it at a different level.
Perhaps.
Just our unfamiliarity of it.
My first year testifying with transportation was last year, and we didn't talk about advanced construction that much last year, but it was definitely in the budget.
Well, I wanted to touch on another thing that our Representative Corcoran had said. When I was first asked about the thought on the transportation budget with the leadership of the House, I said, I think you should double down on the governor's effort to bring money to construction. It's been a $20 million, shortfall for gas tax for 20 million the year before, and it was 20 million the year before. This isn't it's stacked up, and now it's years of being stacked up behind and not having money to do much beyond maintenance, and a few additional projects. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do or the answer is going to be, but that was my first response is let's double down on the 10 million and go to 20. And if we did, and if there would be other pieces that would build to that, you're confident that you could find the work to get done. And you're confident it's available to us.
Yes. The contractors and the workers are out there. So yes, we could find the work to get done. We would
Find the federal match.
find the federal match, borrow more on advanced construction. The exact number of advanced construction is a continuous dialogue between our AOT exec leadership and FHWA. When it reaches a level that FHWA is not comfortable with, that's when we have to start building it back down.
You could still take those T funds and put them into town highway projects if you didn't have money to match. Representative Pouch?
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of simplify things. So, an argument of taking the 10 million from the purchase and use. it leverages X amount, 80 million. But that 80 million is actually sitting in the FHW bank. And if we don't take it this year, it's still there next year. Is that true?
For advanced construction, yes.
Okay, so it's really not an argument that if we don't take the 10 million, we're gonna lose that match. That match is there. I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to come up with the match either this year or next year.
Cost of construction.
Right. I mean, I'd say every budget cycle is different, right? But no, I wouldn't say we're losing the match if we don't take it this year. It's just that we've built a budget assuming that those projects would happen in 27. So that's a more real construct than any future budget that we haven't built yet.
Right. You've built a budget that allows that to happen. You know, every year, I think for now 3 years or 4 years, you know, the question always comes up, are we leaving any money on the table? And we've been told, nope, we're capturing everything we can in you know, formula funds and then grants too. We go after as many as we feel we can get or use. But now we're getting a little more understanding that, hey, sometimes our budget pulls a little from the future. To, you know, mix, and I get that, you know, hey, you can't get it to the dollar, right? You got projects and you start lining them up, they're ready to go, and we have the match, let's go ahead and pull a little from the future. But again, it's fair to say, if the 10 million doesn't happen for whatever reason, that's not money we're gonna lose. That's still out there to capture for the next year or the following year.
Dependent on the budgets that we
Yes.
propose for.
You have to have a budget to do that next year. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
Representative McCoy?
But if we don't have the 10 million this year, if we don't get the 10 million this year, those projects that are earmarked for that 10 million do not happen.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess I have a couple questions. Number one, if paving seems to be the big issue, that we're going to go from 148 miles down to whatever, 70 or something next year.
That miles, million, that's,
Yeah, 100, okay. So what, is any of that money match money, or is it just state money that paves our state highways, not federal highways? I don't know if we get matches for federal, but I don't know if you're the person that we ask this or not, but if we decide to pave Route 30, which is a state highway, you know, 30 miles of Route 30. Is any of that money matched by any of federal dollars?
80%.
I see
The,
Logan shaking his head. Yes.
the paving program that's in, section 5A, the white book,
Okay,
is matched
so
by
it's-
FHWA.
So if we don't realize this 10 million a year for 5 million, that's $50 million that we do not have to put towards not only anything but paving, which seems to be first and foremost, I know on my constituents' minds, that's all I ever hear about. What's wrong with the roads? How come we can't pave the roads? How come we can't fix the roads? What's wrong with the bridges? Can we fix the bridges? I mean, first and foremost, that's what's on their mind. So when we put in those projects with the $10 million that are earmarked, like we might get it, if we get it, this is what we'd like to do with the money, which realizes 63 million from the feds. If we put the 10 million towards paving projects, what do we realize from the federal government? The same 63 million, or is it a different amount?
If, I'm gonna defer to Director
Administration, Morris Director of Administration for AMT. Essentially, we could realize the same state and federal match put forward as a package of bridge and paving projects. So if we were to replace the bridge projects with all paving projects, if they were available to draw from, which without having the chief engineer here, I can't say we wouldn't have paving projects to draw from, but the prioritization of the projects was developed with what's available and what, what's prioritized for work that needs to be done already. And so they're able to be drawn forward. I don't know if there is an equivalent dollar amount in paving, but it would also require federal and state dollars.
And the 19 projects were, I don't know, okay, shovel ready, but they were ready to go. These projects. Okay, thank you.
And if the decisions were made not to make that move of the purchase of new stacks and that amount of projects that leveraged the 63 million, I think percent of it, and they didn't happen this year, with the inflation rate on construction projects and the costs and the situations we have with what that does or doesn't do to our contractors, I know becomes a bigger question than what I was really asking about is workforce, and they don't have that work to do this year and where they look for it. But just on what you know about the construction costs, how much more are they gonna cost the next year for the exact same work if we don't do them this year?
Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed has said inflation for construction projects is 23%. So add 23% onto the 9.3.
Like another way of saying my 23 hour, 20 or $10 million is now $77 million or 23% less. Is that true? Or am I sorry, 7.7 million? Or is that a real simple and that's not necessarily the right way to look? It's gonna be in effect that much less buying power. Like our 10 million is really only gonna result in substantially less, 23% less activity.
That's good, quick math.
I get a star today on that. So it's gonna cost us 2.3 million or $2.3 million minimum, at least, or more, because if you look at it, the 66 million, I guess, or 63 plus 10, now you're gonna get out and I'd have to, start writing it down, but it's gonna cost substantially more, 23% more 1 year later. If, without any other factors, just as what we know right now.
That would be an argument for maintaining the governor's recommend 27.
Representative Fenn?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Jeremy or anybody else. But we did hear some testimony about, how inflation after COVID just went skyrocketed. But I'm not sure I heard the number 23% expected from this year to next year. Is that the administration's viewpoint that we expect inflation on construction and paving to go up 23% next year?
I wouldn't say it's the administration's viewpoint. Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed has said that's an average inflation for construction projects across the Northeast.
For how many years?
Based on the bid you've been seeing, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just sort of curious if that, I didn't understand that was a number that we can start penciling in.
I will talk with him more about the number of years that he used to get the average. But I also saw Secretary Flynn's hand up.
Just offered that testimony in the Senate, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, AASHTO, which is the national organization, testified. Jim Timon is the executive director. That across the US, we're seeing 40 to 60% higher costs for construction projects. And I'm gonna incorrectly remember, I think it's the American Society of Civil Engineering. That can be checked in testimony. They testified as well. They're completely independent of the administration and of us. They also testified to the 40 to 60%. That's how much hotter construction is run. What we've seen in Vermont is on average 23%. That's a factual number. It's not something given to us to work with by the administration. It's what we're seeing for a reality. Even though, to your point, sort of the inflation is down dramatically from 3 or 4 years ago. There's more to the cost of a project than just the rate of inflation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So another question, sorry, we just had this is revenue forecast for the state came out and there was no change or basically was flat, and there was a situation where the transportation revenues didn't warrant any additional or trigger activity. So does that mean 3 months from now, there'll be another forecast? I assume, right? It's every 3 months or so?
It's every 6. But yes.
6 months.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have to deal with it in the fall, so I'm not sure how the 6 months
There's a consensus revenue forecast in July and January. We responded to the July forecast in September.
Okay. At what point do you start, if you haven't already, what would be the next set of contingencies, adjustments, or activity that accounting work like this would be on the table for the next piece, or is that something you're already looking at, and what domino goes down next if we don't have the level of revenue?
Are you saying if there's a downgrade in July 2026, how would we respond to it?
I would say, yeah, I guess that's really what I'm asking, because the budget has a reduction in force. It has a change in projects. It has, some overtime, maintenance, highway, rail. It's got a little bit of everything for the big $33 million. But we went to in the fall, went to a reduction in force and some other project roles. So I guess I'm not an economist, but it doesn't look like this is going to be very, well, certainly won't be a surprise if that's where we're at in July. What is in here that helps buffer anything that we might hit again in July?
So
Maybe I'd rephrase it that way, if that's two different questions or if that's one, a couple of different ways of looking at it.
I thought of another thing you might be talking about, Chair. You might be asking what if actual revenues come in under forecast at the end of this fiscal year? So it could either be under forecast for this fiscal year or a downgrade for July 26, correct?
And they both, if they're over a certain amount, they trigger a forced activity within the budget, right? That you just had to deal with, which wasn't pleasant either. And then you have to build this budget. Is there anything in here that's going to help us buffer that situation?
So I'd say for revenues coming in under consensus for this fiscal year, I'm already compiling a list in my head. If we needed to find money at the end of the fiscal year because revenue underperformed consensus, what would we do? And we do that every year. Although we have heard from the Department of Finance and Management that their preference this year, if that were to occur, would be to have us go into the Transportation Fund Stabilization Reserve and then propose reversions in the BAA process rather than proposing reversions administratively year end, as we have typically done.
So that by putting this 5.4, which Representative Corcoran sort of lined to 5.3 on the highway, it's sort of like the idea that we took sort of the money, knowing that it's not going to go through all the projects. You've already taken it to build this budget. It won't be there the way it has been the last couple of years in terms of carryovers, I guess is more the number. You're in effect taking the carryover early. It won't be there. Something will have to be something else. We took, highway money and carryover before to balance the budget last year, and now we're taking it in effect early. You could somewhat argue it that way. I don't know that that's entirely true, but I feel like this limits the options if something goes bad, if it continues to go in the wrong direction.
That's one of the
We're
worst
That's what I'm saying. You're taking one more out of the belt is already being used up. I guess it heightens the financial pressures even more.
The reductions in the 27 budget give us less options for responding to a revenue downgrade in 27, but I wouldn't say that the 5.3 is carry forward.
Okay, so it does give you we have less options come July because of this construct, is what I think you just said. I just want to be very clear about that. You will have less, doesn't mean you have no options, but you will have less options to deal with a revenue downgrade than you otherwise would have based on what you put together here. Based on previous budget years, you had more options to deal with a downgrade than you do now, or you will in July.
Yes, but I would also say that as CFO, it is my job to respond to revenue downgrades.
Don't remember you again.
And those are certainly difficult decisions, and your options will be less available than they are previous year and the previous year to that. And I think the committee needs to understand what we've already done in the fall and combining what this budget is saying. And that brings us back to the politics of the discussion. where we're at. I'm sorry. So I have one more in that area that is Representative White.
Yeah, Candace, could you just help clarify for me where the $5.3 million is that
Yeah.
is in discussion?
Absolutely. It is line 4 on the reductions section of the slide deck. That's right.
And that slide deck is from today or from, it's here?
I did resubmit it for today, but I presented this a week and a half ago.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. I've got that up. I just couldn't find that chart. Thank you. And then,
Page 3.
You get the, I went, sorry, I got
okay, thank you.
Representative Ford.
So get all these discussion, and this is, I think this brings the point clearly home to me that we need to claw back the 15 million that we give every year in purchase and use monies. Yeah, I don't think we can continue doing this for transportation. I'm directing this at my chair. Witness. I just think that.
Candace agrees with you.
I just think that, you know, we can't do this every year. We've been doing this for the last couple of years and we just cannot continue to do this. It's money that, you know, when this started years and years ago, that transportation was flush with cash and could give it to education who was hurting. Well, education continues to hurt, but we're hurting now, and we have been for the last couple of years. So I think we need to just, if it were me, if I had a magic wand, I'd bite the bullet this year. Education is in flux and they're trying to figure out how to fund it again. Take it now and then let them figure out what they need to do with 50 million less. That's just my soapbox for today. Thank you very much.
You're putting me in a really bad spot. Representative Teaser and then.
Sure, thanks for this. First question. Stabilization fund, how much money do we have in that?
Stabilization reserve, oh my gosh.
In round figures.
Yes. I don't
I think
know.
you can call a friend.
Give me 1 second. That is 16.6 for 27.
That's the total amount.
Yes. Need to call a friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then another question. So understanding the machinations that a budget like this would develop. And so you put everything together and you say, well, we got a $33 million hole. How are we going to solve that? And so there's a lot of different levers you can pull back and forth. But the question is the $30 million or $33 million hole is, do you do any zero-based fund budgeting?
Yes.
Okay, so if you do zero-based budgeting, you really can't do it out of the white book, can you? Because they're ongoing projects, or you're just going to pull those? Is that what you're saying to me?
I would actually say that the Highways Division does zero-based budgeting every year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Just had a clarification on the stabilization there. January had a downgrade of 1.5 and we made it up through the stabilization. That's going to get backfilled in this year's budget.
Correct.
How did we make it up this year's budget?
In 27,
Yeah, where we're just gonna backfill it, but I don't think it was ever explained to us how we came up with that one. Because basically if it was 33, is it like 44 or 34.5 now? So you wanted to look at it that way?
I'd say that was a part of the reductions that we took. So when,
Oh, and the memo that you gave us? Like this?
This part or down in here?
in the slide deck, so the 33 number that we've been talking about from September 2025 was a point in time estimate.
Yeah.
It just so happens that we took $21 million of reductions and $12 million worth of the indirect cost rate, and that equals 33. The fact that we're backfilling the stabilization reserve by 1.5, probably means that our hole was 1.5 larger back in September, but I was doing the best I could in September to predict what the hole would actually be.
All right, yeah, so it was already covered, all right. I just wasn't clear on that, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So the budget address was pretty clear in terms of taxes. But this budget does include a tax or fee increase of $1.9 million. Are you looking at any other fees or pieces for that potential downgrade or any other parts of the budget as we go through it? Why that one and not any others?
I'm sorry, Chair, can you tell me more about the 1.9?
Sure. Pass
Oh,
credit card processing
different.
fees for DMV V-Trips transactions onto the customers, and I assume the customers mean Vermonters.
Yes,
And that would be a $1.9 million tax increase to Vermonters. We're willing to do it here. What other ones are we willing to look at?
I wouldn't propose to speak for the administration. My understanding on the 1.9% is that it's a standardization across the state of Vermont.
The 1.9 million?
Or sorry, the 1.9 million standardization across the state of Vermont on how we treat these types of charges.
Okay.
Secretary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're reestablishing what we took away from DMV. We removed those fees probably 3 fiscal years ago. But in part, due to all the pressure, we've added those back. But not every Vermonter would have to pay the fee, only a Vermonter who uses a credit card. We accept ACH direct payments, we accept cash, we accept checkbook. So it's an option for every payer to not have to face those fees if they want to have another form of payment. But for the credit cards that are used, we are passing the cost of the banking fees. These are the banking fees. These are not DMV deriving new revenue. That is a parsing terminology, but it's a fact. We're passing the banking fees through for the use of a credit card.
Representative Pouch?
And just to understand what we said there, and maybe you didn't imply it, but are we saying that now across the board for all Vermont folks who take credit cards, like I guess I could get a camping reservation on a credit card, is there a fee applied for that? Is this across the board now? Change, do you know?
No, I do not know. I'm sorry, Representative. I would defer to other agencies, departments, yeah.
But that would be an example, which I've done, you know, get a reservation, use a credit card. Not sure, yeah, I'd have to look to see if they applied a fee or not. So this wasn't across the board by the state, it was DMV saying, hey, it's time to add the fee, the banking fee to the cost.
Yes, I think that's more accurate.
Thanks.
Representative McCoy and then Representative Lally and then Representative White. And then Representative Keiser, I think, was up there after that.
I just want to make a comment that towns, municipalities who accept credit cards for their property tax payments have like the credit cards usually are 3%. The taxpayer pays that, not the town. So the town remains whole in their property tax. So it's pretty much the norm for any municipality that is going to accept credit cards. They're not going to pay your 3%.
So they
Or your-
add
or your
3% to it.
Well,
Yeah, it's an automatic thing yeah. So the credit card company will charge the additional 3%, but the town only realizes the property tax amount. And the credit card company retains the 3% as a cost of doing business.
So, may I ask? a
We're
clarifying
necessarily-
question?
Yes,
Well.
I'm
as
losing-
a-
I understand. It's not your
Yeah,
fault.
she's a-
I let it go a couple times and then
So if I pay with my credit card, I'll be charged 3% more? Okay, thanks, yeah.
Representative Lally's all
I'm not
set.
paying your 3%, it's the other property tax owner who's paying for my check.
Representative, I think it was Representative White, man.
I have answered my own question.
All right, excellent. Representative Keezy?
Just a personal experience, I deal with ANR this weekend, $1,000. And, to avoid the, you just put the check amount, check numbers in and the, routing and all that type of thing. I think it's statewide that they're not collecting the fee, but anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Anyone else have any other questions or any? I certainly appreciate the complexity of 900+ million and the amount of unbelievable different things that the Agency of Transportation is involved in. The incredible amount of programs and the amount of activity that it does for Vermonters. And I certainly, you have my appreciation for all that you had to put together and to make it happen, and to your entire executive team and to all the people out there with all the winter weather that is out there. But trying to understand the real financial struggles that you're in, and highlighting that some of the things that you've done do have some consequences, as has been pointed out, in terms of future years, and revenue is a big issue and dealing with it. And I appreciate all the way you've done. I appreciate you coming back in and going over it again. And I appreciate the Secretary being here and his team. And if there's not any other questions, I think we're at a good spot to take a break for